Today's video is going to be one of the deadest games out there. And I can say that with some confidence because a bunch of other games came along that replaced it. Now, I'll be honest with you, this game had, according to like corporate mindset, very smart ideas for its execution. However, smart ideas do not always make sense in every context. This game being an example of that. If you are a fan of this game, by all means, I do not mean to offend you, but the game does suck. So let me just get to it, because this game has been replaced. Something came out in 2019 that obsoleted this game. This is Mongoose Publishing's Battlefield Evolution Ultra Modern Tabletop Combat. It says Advanced Rulebook down here, which I think is the biggest quack of them all. Now, this should have been advertised a little bit differently, if you ask me. I'm going to begin with the end, and I'm going to tell you why this game failed. Then I'm going to get into it. Battlefield Evolution was marketed as a high-end, really good contact with the future of possible warfare. It took place in the year 2015 to 2025. Funny, right? This game talked about how warfare was going to be in the future. It featured pre-painted, included stat cards boxes. Not like gacha boxes, but they're the ones that had like the transparent outside where you can look in and see what miniatures you were getting, and the miniatures were secured with like, zippy ties. That is what they had. And you needed to buy the miniatures to get the rules for the game too. This book does not contain any rules for individual units except for the example United States Marine Corps Infantry Squad card. So that is all you get. This game had that disconnect where you had to buy pre-painted miniatures in a pre-painted box with the cards to play the game. It advertised in this game itself a lot of more advanced ways to do the hobby, which were the kind of things that people that were into pre-paintings wouldn't do, because they talk about cutting dried plaster in this book. Just a little note. They advertised it as a high-end game, whereas the mechanics did not support that decision. This should have been advertised as an easy-to-play pickup game. It would have done a lot better. After all, it's ultra-modern tabletop combat with an advanced rulebook. It's supposed to be awesome, right? Let me just go into it. First of all, I bought this book relatively recently in a discard pile. The pages are coming out. The nice thing about it is this front page. This is essentially the index of the book. It has an index. The contents page does its job fantastically. The product that replaced this in 2019 was Spectre Operations. And Spectre Operations has a lot of the same ideas that this game has, but done right. Very much correct compared to Battlefield Evolution. Let me just get off my soapbox and just talk about the game then. So, it has an introduction section that talks straight up about how you play the game. It has natural ones. So if you roll a 1 on a d6, there's no possible success. This game doesn't allow for pre-measuring. I'll be honest with you. If I wanted to do an accurate Modern Warfare game, pre-measuring distances would not be a rules thing. It would be a unit thing. These units cannot pre-measure distance. They don't have the optics to do so. These units can. Solves the problem right there. Because pre-measuring is kind of a qualm that some wargamers have. Flames of War does it. Other war games don't. So they have that contention in this game. The foundation of Battlefield Evolution is good. It's their execution that was terrible. There's a gallery of the different pre-painted miniatures you can get. Let me bring this closer to la camera. They were about this quality or worse when you got them in the box. Bent miniatures were a thing. I bought a United States Marine Corps, there's none, show you here. Bought a United States Marine Corps box, and I bought a Middle Easterns box. And they aren't in my collection anymore. They were such poor quality miniatures. They both melted, broke, chipped off paint. I mean, there's a bunch of, they weren't good miniatures. But that shows you the gallery of the miniatures on these two pages. And then it goes into building an army and playing the game. One other thing about the miniatures. Do you guys see that M1 Abrams in comparison to the Marine Corps guy standing next to it? Does that Abrams look to scale? That Abrams is about the same size as like a Buffalo. Or yeah, maybe... no, I think a Bradley's slightly larger than that. An M1 Abrams would probably be an extra inch wider, 2 inches longer, and like an extra inch or two tall. The M1 Abrams is big. The Leopard 2 is big. You need to make scale miniatures. And that's another thing. I don't think the vehicles were in scale in this game. This M1 Abrams being... I never bought an Abrams. I never touched one. But looking at this photo, I can tell you, unless they made a different model for production than what they have here, yeah, the Abrams was the wrong size. Here's where we really get to talk about the game. This is the only example of a card for the game I have, because I don't have the miniatures box anymore. Pause it here instead and read those rules. I'll be quick with you. Point values here, what you get in the squad is here, what the squad stats are like here, but the weapons are on the opposite side. Let me tell you about the weapons really quickly. If you have weapons in the squad, I can guarantee you that one, it's pretty much just a D6 per man. That's what you're rolling, is a D6 per man. Then you have support weapons like a machine gun that can throw in 2 dice, unless you set them up in which they can throw 4 dice. Then you have individual like RPGs and whatnot, grenade launchers, that do more effects and have a higher kill score on the dice they roll. This game, like X-Wing, like certain other games that I looked at and go, no, This combines your damage dice with your attack dice. I love war games that separate the 2-hit versus the damage because it allows for real granularity in how weapons work in war. You can hit an enemy and not kill them. Happened with the Matilda tank, happened with the Sherman tank, happened with the Tiger tank, happened with the M1 Abrams tank. It's possible to hit something and not kill it. That's how this game runs. And it's pretty much a D6 per infantry, which is a very bad idea because all you're going for is a target number. And then if you happen to roll the kill number, it outright kills them instead of just hitting them. So that is put into the fact. And then your armor is an armor save, which weirdly enough should technically go after the kill, because the kill is listed over here, but target and kill happen in the same step, whereas armor is its own step that happens afterwards. Now, in this game, you get 2 actions apiece per unit, so you can move, shoot, move and shoot and move. You get the idea. Very flexible. Like I said, a good foundation. But you're running off of this really shitty, you just roll 1d6 per infantryman to see what's happening, plus 1 dice if you've got a machine gun in the squad, plus 3 dice if the machine gun's set up properly in a defensive position. You get the idea? Are you hearing me here? The dice rolls in this game did not allow for granularity. It was a very simple, basic pickup, super simplified rule set. This game was made in 2007, and the fact this game failed was based on 2 things. First of all, it was competing with other games like, let's say, War Machine and Hordes. It was going to compete against X-Wing. X-Wing came out later, not too much later, but let me tell you something. When X-Wing came out, people were not paying attention to this game anymore. And, of course, better war games are out there. I mean, Flames of War is a better war game. When Team Yankee came out, there was no reason to play Battlefield Evolution. Although when Spectre Operations came out, a couple of years later, that's the real tie-in. You could even use your old miniatures, assuming they survived. Okay, anyway. So we have this. This is the front of the card. And let me show you the back of the card. You can pause this and read rules if you want to, too. So this is the back of the card. Now, it has a butt ton of rules, and that's cool. And they make sense. I think adding rules like this actually caused the granularity of the game to go up. If they were just relying upon these, and then lo and behold, the singular dice you were rolling for just about every weapon except for, like, let's say a machine gun. Yeah, this game wasn't complex enough to represent modern warfare. And I want to say that honestly. There's one thing I hate about the modern idea of making everything simple and everything accessible, is that it also makes everything stupid. You do need, for some things, necessary complexity. I was okay with the fact that in the air war game, that missiles didn't do damage, they just hit what they killed. Had they simplified a bunch of other stuff in the game would have been playable. I sometimes think, though, that there are certain things where the complexity is necessary. In an air combat game, you need better movement rules. In a modern combat game, you really need to show the differences in skill between your different combatants and the impact gear has. You should probably be running with a D10 minimum, and you really need to have a rule set that doesn't combine your 2 hit and your 2 damage into the same exact damn roll. Jumping over this book that's falling apart on me, this is an explanation of how the actual attack phase turns out. In just a second, I will talk about the fire zone, but this is just the layout of how combat works. So you roll your dice. That's the roll, mind you. These are not secondary rolls, okay? This is the roll you make, one roll of dice. He applies one here, doesn't do its job. As you can see, the M1 Abrams sticks around. These are misses. These get taken care of. There is a killed model that gets a kill score that gets removed right away. These guys make armor saves. One of them fails the armor save, one passes. So looking at that, I can tell you straight up that that's a very economical, fast way and simple way to run the rules, but it's not accurate to modern warfare. This game has nothing where you talk about casualties. Spectre does. This game has nothing where you talk about the cohesiveness of units, and it's different to have different guys in different parts of the board instead of all traveling in one clump. Spectre does. This game has so many bad ideas that are left over from essentially Napoleonic or fantasy wargaming that it can't do modern combat correctly, even though the foundation of the rules is correct. You could take the rule set for Battlefield Evolution and rework it for like fantasy wargaming or for like historical wargaming, and it would do better, if you ask me. You could probably even do like a certain science fiction setting better. You're gone to the science fiction. Some things just no longer matter, right? Also, let me talk to you about fire zones. In this game, you need to make a 6-inch radius called the fire zone, where it's not you get to hit all those guys. It's you may target guys inside the 6-inch zone. It's a cleanup rule, and it sounds like it would be a really good rule for getting rid of like spread firepower all over the battlefield levels of bullshit. However, you can split your fire zone. Now you do lose 2 damage dice off of one of the units to do so. But, you know, you still get they have a concept here, then they make a counter concept that, yeah, it costs you damage dice, but if it was designed to clean up the battlefield and how you target, they lost that when they did this. They did. Now, that one does show an armored vehicle being targeted separately from an infantry unit, even though we have instances where they're all combined right here. Now, what we can get at with that is if you had that rule mean that the guys with heavy weapons could engage heavier targets separately instead of having 2 fire zones, that could work too. You could just do that and it would actually make more sense. So let's just go through some of the things you'll find in this rule set. Terrain typically blocks line of sight, causes cover, or doesn't matter. Since you do have 2 move actions, you can just take 2 move actions to move normal distance through terrain, because terrain halves your movement. There's also a lot of things about size of the model, like the size of a building. You measure from like, give me a second. There's your fire zones. Here's it talking about clear, obscured, and blocked line of sights. Whenever shooting a little bit earlier. They do recommend that you either use smoke tokens and leave a large model on the table, or you make destroyed vehicle terrain. Suppression works differently. If you have hit every target in the unit, if a unit is allocated at least as many damage dice in a single shoot action as it has models, it goes suppressed. And suppressed means it can only move as a reaction. You can do reactions if the enemy shoots at you or moves within 10 inches of you. You get to do a reaction, which could be moving away, moving towards them, shooting them back. However, you know, ready actions just mean you can do something special. Ready action is how the United States Marine Corps turns their machine guns set up so they can fire 4 dice instead of 2. Oh, it's breaking on me. Crap, see? It's falling apart as... Did you hear that? Yeah. This is a section that talks about reactions. It's pretty simple. You can put it down into 1 paragraph worth of rules, really. With structures, notice how they're measuring from one corner to the other and saying that's the size of the structure. What about that? You're measuring from like this to this. What about that? Is that a separate structure by chance? And they have a chart going into structures. So the structures are detailed relatively well. Air units. As someone who's really into air combat games, this kind of gets me, but I realize that they're trying to put air units into a ground game, essentially. So you have the Warhammer 40k / Flames of War problem, where how do aircraft work? They add an extra phase that happens after the first and second player's turns during a game turn. The flight speeds also show, let me just say it, there is a great amount of ignorance of wargamers, if not the population in general, how air combat and air combat units work. There's a great amount of ignorance. They have flight speeds here. They talk about VTOL, loiter, cruise, and burn. Why would you be doing burn over a battlefield unless you really just wanted to get the fuck out of there? You don't burn over a battlefield. You're either going to be like doing loiter or VTOL. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. But check this out. Their loiter description is inaccurate. A highly maneuverable flight state, I'm not going to really contest that part, where the air unit is being kept aloft primarily by its motive power source rather than its lift surfaces, aka wings. Wrong! The opposite is true. Loiter is where you're not burning fuel. You're trying to stay in the air as long as possible. This is why the A-10 Warthog is actually good. People never talk about the fact they can stay in the air for 2 hours straight. Loiter means you're using a minimum amount of fuel and you're just keeping in the air as best as possible. Helicopters are actually very bad at loiter. They directly depend upon their fuel tanks to stay in the air. Loiter is actually better with stuff like A-1 Sky Raiders, A-10 Warthogs, anti-submarine aircraft loiter by default because their entire job is loitering until the damn thing shows up or we have sonar lock on it. Loitering works differently than these people think, and this actually extends further in the game. They do describe something later of air combat vehicles in this game that makes me go, oh, I hate you. They misunderstand what the F-22 Raptor does, and they misunderstand what the Eurofighter Typhoon does. They do. Also, if you look at the chart they have for air speeds and air in this game, why would you even use burn? Burn shouldn't exist. But yeah, these are how far the damn thing can move on the table. Minimum move, I like that. Maximum move, sure. Maximum turn angle. It makes sense until they get to the 45 degree also for burn. No, burn should be a you can't turn. You're going freaking straight. Thank you. Target rating goes up substantially. Notice how it's a 6 and a 7 up there. Nice. I like that. 7 for a cruise sounds really nice. Crash distance. Yes, I agree with that. They have here shoot to dogfight where you're shooting other units. That would actually be called intercept. Dogfighting is where you're trying to maneuver against the enemy and kill them with short-range weapons. Intercept is where you fly out to meet an enemy and you shoot them down. The way this game runs air combat, you would never perform a dogfight. You would do an intercept. That has to be known. They do have a bit of interesting detail about air-to-ground interaction and how to deal with the, doing damage to units. This isn't bad. I'm okay with this section here. The graphics are kind of funny, but, It also isn't those 2 pages, there's a third page involved. So they talk about landing and taking off. That is for transport helicopters, or if you're trying to land a damaged helicopter, it's like a damaged gunship. Because landing a Harrier or an F-35 onto this tabletop is not going to make any sense. You're passing a high-value asset to the enemy by doing that. No. More advanced rules. I actually like this section. Covered advanced means you can do a ready action before you move, and it allows you to take advantage of small dips in the terrain. Your count is concealed while moving. I like that. Aerial deployment means you just drop out of helicopters with parachutes. Elevated firing positions, you should know what that means. Emplacements, self-explanatory. Extreme ranges, super long range in this game. You roll the 1 dice, and if they succeed, you re-roll it. If it also succeeds the second time, it counts. Minefield are self-explanatory with 2 different kinds of mines. Reserves works more like Warhammer than Flames of War, thank God. Your reserve units arrive on your second turn. They talk about how you could choose to take longer to bring them on, but if they are off the board, when the game ends, they do count as being lost. And I like that. Roadside bombs. They're not included with mines because roadside bombs are essentially hidden. Sentries, they work like infantry, but they are for specific scenarios, and you use the same guys that have like carbines in your infantry units. Supporting artillery, tactical withdrawal. They have that in most other Mongoose games, where if you want to just walk a unit off the back of the table, you can, and the enemy gets 25% of the victory points. That makes sense because Warhammer is not how real war works. And if you want to represent real war, there will be times where you just have a few things happen. You look at the scenario and say, nah, this is not worth more blood and guts, and you just draw off the table. That is literally a thing. Victory points. Why it's in advanced rules, I don't know, but victory points are there. Then it goes over the various different factions. You have the European Task Force, which weirdly enough is represented by Britain in this game, despite the fact that Britain in the lore is not the main mover. It's France and Germany. United States Marine Corps, which I was looking at, they have this cool little, they have a hybrid electric vehicle for the Marine Corps to replace their Humvees. Okay, we still have Humvees nowadays, but yeah. Then we have that, I bought one of these, yeah, they're okay. And the M1 Abrams, they get active protection systems. Everybody else gets command vehicles, smoke launchers, and supporting artillery, but the Americans also get active protection. I do believe the Europeans get active protection as well. Yes, active. So these are pretty much clones. These are clones of each other. The Middle Easterners have a different force where they have government versus militia, which is funny because we got militia to start with. They have the True Believers special rule and Civilian Troop special rule. Instead of anything like active protection, they get command vehicles, smoke launchers, and supporting artillery. The Chinese, they get a basic force where it's just command vehicles, smoke launchers, and support artillery. But their units are pretty solid from what I heard. I mean, I didn't really know. There is an erroneous statement made in here, and I know this because I am an air combat guy. I'm just going to let you guys pause and read that paragraph. That is armchair generalship at its finest. The F-22 is designed to kill multiple aircraft by itself. It carries 8 missiles, and its entire job is you show up, you kill 8 aircraft before the 8 aircraft know you're there, and then you go home. Those missiles are pretty damn accurate. I mean, you might be able to force it so the Raptor only is half effective, and so they only kill like 3 or 4 guys, in which case 2 is still not going to do it. They have like a newspaper back here that, by the way, it's pixelated. Do you see that? That's pixelated. But it has a story where the Europeans and the Americans clash, and specifically their air units, and 2 Raptors are shot down by 2 surviving Eurofighter Typhoons. I'm going to make a whole different video comparing what different aircraft can do, because the F-35, the Su-57, the F-22, and the J-20 are very unique boys. They don't work like normal aircraft. And Europe doesn't have something like that yet. Europe does not have a stealth fighter that they don't buy from the Americans. Yeah, they advertise their Starship Troopers. This is the better evolution game. If you have this game is better than this game. Trust me. I'll just say it because it's science fiction. It's better. The backside is mostly like talking about scenarios. It has scenario setups, the various different campaign possibilities, attrition and squads and campaign. Here's their infamous pour out some plaster and cut it up like a man. That's awesome. But I would not recommend putting that kind of instruction inside of a book that's meant for the kind of people who are going to buy pre-painted miniatures. Flames of War has it right. You want to sell pre-painted miniatures? Sell pre-painted terrain. If I was going to move in a pre-painted direction with a modern combat thing, I would sell terrain and I would sell miniatures. I wouldn't tell you to build it out of plastic or you had to pour yourself. I mean, it's easy to do that compared to a bunch of other stuff, but my God, that is equipment intensive. It's not pre-bought. The aesthetic does not turn me away. The subject matter does not turn me away. It's the fact that the game is just underdone for what it's supposed to be. Yeah. I mean, they have 2 conflicting ideas here. They do. They want to run a really intricate modern game that's accurate, but they want it to be simple to play. No, you're going to sacrifice one side to get the other. Trust me there. You will.
And that's what I think about Mongoose Publishing's Battlefield Evolution. I wonder if there's a basic rulebook. I don't remember if one actually came with each individual box. That's my coverage of the game. Thank you for watching my video, and may the dice roll ever in your favor.